Reading Comprehension, Theory and Goals for Instruction. Explicit comprehension strategy instruction is the support that students need to glean meaning from text. The number one most important thing to remember about reading comprehension instruction, or just reading instruction in general, is for students to become independent strategic readers. We want them to be able to take whatever we have taught them and transfer it to their own independent use. What do strategic readers do? First, they begin with a purpose. They recognize that different goals require different types of reading. They realize that the strategies they use depend in part on the purpose that was set. They personalize and transform the text to make it become part of their semantic memory. We'll talk more about that in a minute. They constantly coordinate strategies. They modify, they adjust, and check until meaning is created. They persevere. They have reading stamina, and they don't give up when it gets difficult. They utilize their reading skills and strategies to be able to read any text they desire to read, and we need to teach students how to do that. Remember that prior knowledge and vocabulary are the two most important components to reading comprehension. First, we teach the vocab. That will support their ability to create the pegs on which to hang what they've learned and what they've read. And then when they are reading new material, they will use those pegs as their prior knowledge to comprehend. Comprehension instruction occurs before, during, and after reading. This is explicit instruction. Before students read, we want them to activate their prior knowledge, set a purpose for reading, maybe predict and ask questions. During reading, we want students to be making connections, monitoring their understanding, generating questions, and staying focused. After reading, we want students to reflect on their reading. We want them to summarize, we want them to question, we want them to reflect, discuss, respond, and even more importantly, we want them to evaluate what they read. Teachers need to support their students in understanding why a strategy is useful, how it is used, when it is appropriate. Teachers demonstrate and model strategy use, usually through think alouds, and this is a powerful way to show students how to use those strategies. There are basically two theories on reading comprehension that I'm going to briefly summarize. There are several out there, but there seem to be two that are mentioned the most in research. The first theory we're going to talk about is the simple theory, and thus its name. It's pretty basic. The simple theory is basically just a relationship between the linguistic comprehension, sometimes known as language comprehension, understanding the language, and word reading skills. Both need to be present for comprehension to occur. Here is the simple theory in pictures. Listening comprehension plus decoding equals reading comprehension. Here is another visual that relates to the simple theory and basically categorizes readers into 4 quadrants. And this semester we've been focusing on struggling readers, and they would be the readers that would be in the lower left-hand quadrant. The poor word recognition, poor language comprehension, these are probably going to be the students that you're writing your Tier 2 interventions for. The second theory is the schema theory, and this is Anderson and Pearson. And this is a widely accepted theory on how readers comprehend text. They believe that reading comprehension emerges from the reader's successful use of prior knowledge, their schema, to construct a coherent and useful meaning for the text. Good comprehension would be the ability to merge the new information with the existing information. And this theory explains why prior knowledge is so important for comprehending what we read. If we wanted to visualize one specific schema held in someone's brain, and this particular schema would be on dogs or canines, you can see that there's all kinds of information that is webbed there. Dogs that they've known, dogs that they've heard or read about, and this is kind of the personal information. And then on the other side of the schema is all the facts that they've learned about dogs, practical knowledge, scientific knowledge. So this is the schema that's used every time the reader reads about dogs or text that relates to dogs. So there's two thought processes that go into how schemas work. The first one is called assimilation, and this is where a kid sees a four-legged animal, this four-legged animal, for the first time. The person knows they have an existing schema about dogs because they have a pet dog. So even though this new dog doesn't really look like their pet dog, they can assimilate that information and realize that not all dogs look the same. When we accommodate information, we realize that our schemas are being challenged. For instance, the existing schema is that his four-legged pet is a dog. But then someone points out this new strange creature that doesn't necessarily look like his dog, but still has four legs. So the person needs to say, okay, not all four-legged animals are dogs. With accommodation, we have to begin creating new schemas. So this particular person, this kid, has to begin developing a new schema for cats. So another way to look at the schema theory is how a reader actually uses their schemas to comprehend text. So let's say a reader is reading a book about bears and they've been successful at comprehending. They then begin comparing the information that they got from that book to their prior knowledge, to their existing schemas. That information that fits into their existing schemas, they assimilate. The information that doesn't necessarily fit into the schema about bears, they will begin to accommodate that information. So for instance, let's say in this book about bears, they read about pandas and they find out that there's two types of pandas. There's the giant panda and the red panda. And they find out that the red panda isn't even really a bear. It's related to the raccoon, and scientists have given it its own classification. So therefore, the reader needs to accommodate or begin a new schema about the red panda. With this slide, we come to the end of our reading comprehension overview of theory and goals for instruction. On your notes page, I would like you to write down 2 characteristics of a strategic reader. I would also like you to define what the simple theory is and what the schema theory is. And we will discuss your notes in class.